Welcome to GV247.tv, the Global Vision Channel. A non-profit web TV channel bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live.
Hello there and welcome to the weekend show on Global Vision TV at gv247.tv and all that, because if you're tuning in every week you'll be sick of me saying it. This is Deborah Menelaus here, and our special guest this week is one Joseph Hubbard.
Hello.
That's correct.
It's very good to be here.
It's great to have you, Joseph. We've met before. We've interviewed Joseph for our geology channel, but just as we did last week with John Mackay, Joseph's really his protege, and we want to hear more about who is behind this person. Do these guys just go out and dig up fossils for the fun of it? Well, some people do, but Joseph, you have a story
Yes.
because you are a believer in the Lord. You're actually a Christian.
I am indeed.
So tell the good people all about yourself, because like John, you were born.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll start. We can start. Well, we could even actually start before that, because that's where the story really starts. It starts with my dad.
Right.
My dad was a very strong atheist before he became a Christian.
Well, his too. You're copying John's one.
I know. Very, very strong. Really anti-God, hating God. Not even though you don't really know why you hate God, you hate God and everything to do with him. He married Mum when she'd been a Christian for about 2 or 3 years. She was in a young 20s, young lady, got married, and she used to, now this is her words, not mine, okay? She used to nag him to become a Christian.
But she was unequally yoked.
Yeah, she was unequally yoked. She wasn't completely.
Don't do that out there, okay?
No, and both of them would say that now as well. It's only by the grace of God, looking back, you can see how his sovereign plan is sort of planned out. So she used to go on, and all the arguments, this is why you have to believe in Christianity, this is why God is real, this is why Jesus is true, all of that. He wasn't having any of it. He was working in a factory at the time, and radical conversion. So basically, he was in the factory, his colleagues were having a discussion about Jesus and God and the Bible, and they called him over because they knew how he liked to sort of, have a dig at Christians and sort of get a bit angry about it. So they called him over and they said, "Oh, Ryan, come over here. What do you think about Jesus Christ? Do you think he's real?" And in Dad's own words, he says, "I opened my mouth to mock, and instead what came out was, yes, I do believe in Jesus. Here's the reason why." And out came spilling all of the arguments that Mum had been pouring into him over the last half a year, right? And he says it was sort of like, Paul on the road to Emmaus experience. 1 minute he said, basically, God turned me from an atheist
Paul on the road to Damascus. I know you meant that, but
I meant that.
Just in case everybody
it was
writes
the disciples
in.
on the road to Emmaus. That's right. Yeah.
Just in case
Paul on the
everybody
road
writes
to
in.
Damascus.
I know
The
you
right
know.
villages.
Right, okay.
Paul on the road to Damascus experience, where suddenly it was like, oh, it's so real to me. He says, God turned me from an atheist to a street preacher in half a second. Wow. After that experience, and after evangelising to all of his colleagues, having been an atheist previously, he then went to the toilets and basically spent the next half an hour crying and dedicated his life to the Lord. On the way home that evening, the first question that came to his mind was, what do I do about the dinosaurs? What do I do about the millions of years? Because he had enough discernment to know that the two didn't really go together very well, the millions of years in the Bible, but he didn't know what to do with them. So he started going to church with Mum, and unfortunately, when he asked I think it was an elder he asked there about, what do I do with the dinosaurs? The response that he got was, well, dinosaurs, they have big sharp teeth. They have big, horrible, vicious claws. They love to kill things. I expect this elder's perception of dinosaurs has been strongly influenced by Hollywood, but he was like, I don't think God would have created something like that. I think that Satan created the dinosaurs. So for 4 years of my life, I came along a month or two later. For the first 4 years of my life, I was banned to have anything to do with dinosaurs, because of course, if if Satan had created the dinosaurs, you're not going to let your son play with dinosaurs, right? So I used to come home with goodie bags, and I knew there'd be dinosaurs in them, and then the dinosaurs would disappear by the next day, when I actually got to unload the goodie bag. So that was sort of my perspective for a while. Now, I've been taking revenge ever since, because I now go and dig the things up, right? But it was actually the ministry of John Mackay, was a ministry of people like Answers in Genesis. It was the old Creation magazine that came through, all of this kind of stuff, that actually began to give my dad a biblical perspective on these kind of issues. I was then being home educated, and so there was a desperate need for resources, which there just wasn't in the UK at the time. So I used to get taken out on the beach right? Because you could get a book or a DVD on the Grand Canyon. You could get a book or a DVD on Mount St Helens. What you couldn't get is a book or a DVD off Hunstanton just down the road from us, right? With wonderful fossils and all sorts. So I used to get taken on fossil hunting trips when I was young, 6 years old, because both my parents wanted to instill in me not just a knowledge about creation, the Bible and that, but also a desire and a want to actually be able to go out and find the information for myself, be able to dig up the information for myself, get the evidence hands-on. But as I said, unfortunately, there wasn't actually any resources for that. So I used to get taken on field trips, secular field trips, by mum and dad, 6 years old. And I remember clear as day, they would say to me, look, the lady leading the field trip is going to tell you a lot of lies. Ignore what the lady's saying. Just learn how to find fossils. Which isn't the greatest way of going about it. But you have to understand, very young parents, but what it means is I've been collecting fossils from a very, very young age. I've been involved in this from a very, very young age, which is how I have now been led to producing materials for the UK, primarily for families, but suitable for anybody, to be able to give them a resource so that they don't have to be in the same position that my parents were in, 15, 20 years ago.
Okay. How did you get involved in so that's the background for it, but has God called you?
Very much so, yeah. I had a very, very strong calling from a very young age. I knew I was going to be called into ministry. One of the most vivid things that I can remember, I was 8 years old. It was my birthday party. It was a family affair, family do, all together in one room. And I was just standing over, I remember clear as day, I was standing over there by the radiator, balloons and everything about. We'd just finished, afternoon chit-chat after the birthday cake and all that. And my great-grandfather, who passed on a few years ago, just looked at me straight in the eye and he just said, Joseph, one day you're going to preach the gospel. That was the first time I ever had that tug of, yes, I know that I am. I was convinced I was going to go through some kind of academic thing, Bible college or studies or whatever, but I knew the end result was going to be I was going to be preaching the gospel, right? So even though I'm now involved in creation ministry, and I firmly believe I've been called into this particular creation ministry, that emphasis on the gospel is still there. It's still for the gospel, through creation, through fossils, through the work that we're doing. But the emphasis has to be, and always will be for me, on the gospel. So I'd been called from a very young age. I didn't have a clue what I was going to do, right? Take me up to 16 years old. I was 16. I had finished home education. I knew I wanted to go to university and do some kind of geology degree, because by now I was feeling very pulled into this kind of a ministry. I had approached a couple of creationist organisations and had sort of been turned down and said, no, you need to go and do your degree and do your work first and come back in 10 years' time, kind of thing. And I was like, right, okay, maybe that is what God wants me to do. But I had no formal GCSEs, A-levels, anything like that. I didn't know what I needed to do to get into university or anything. And I was stressing. I was stressing greatly. I used to get so wound up and frustrated, just going round and round in circles in my head. I used to be in tears on the floor sometimes, just not knowing what to do. And it took a while, but it eventually got to the point where you get to that point of complete and total almost surrender.
Exactly.
You make a realization, exactly. You make a realization that you can't do this. And when it got to the point where I was like, throw my hands up, oh God, if you're going to do this, you're going to need to do this, right? This can't be anything I can do. Anyway, by the time it had got through that point, through the broken point, if you like, within 6 months, I had started university at age 16. I had started my first job at age 16 in order to be able to fund for university, which was coincidentally as a zookeeper, which I was not expecting to get into, but I'm eternally grateful that God did, because it gives you a marvellous perspective on the dead things, actually working out how the living things works, And also in that 6 months, I had met John Mackay as well, and I'd started working with him. So 2014 was the first time I started working with him. I'd set up the museum collection, which was just my own little personal fossil collection. It's now grown to over 3,000 fossils. It's a big part of the UK ministry. And I sort of approached John Mackay, met him for the first time. I'd shared about 2 emails beforehand, and I said to John, look, is there any way that I can get involved? Because for some reason I was being drawn to John. For some reason I just knew this was the ministry I wanted to be in. And John may have shared, he felt that same connection back immediately. And so when I approached him and said, look, what can I do to get involved? His answer was, well, I'm in your area in about 3 weeks' time. We'll get you to do a talk. Right, okay, right. Throwing at the deep end. But I did it. I did the talk. It went fairly well. I've come on a lot further since then, obviously, but for somebody who didn't have any experience or anything, I managed to get sentences out that made sense, so that was a good start. And I just began to get more and more and more involved with that, all the way through my studies in university, through my second qualification in zoology, through stuff with genetics, through all the different bits that I ended up doing, to the end of my study, to leaving my job as a zookeeper, and to moving into full-time ministry this July. So I'm now essentially the director of creation research in the UK and the ministry going forward in the UK, which is somewhat
not bad
frightening,
for somebody who's 21.
Exactly.
Yes,
it's somewhat frightening, but very exciting to see what the Lord is going to end up doing.
That's amazing. I think we first met you a couple of years ago at the Answers in Genesis conference.
Right,
was that the first time
we
met you?
Yes.
And even then, now, this is where you put your fingers in your ears, because I'm going to say things about you. We knew we were meeting somebody extraordinary, and we recognised the hand of God upon this young man. Your age had a lot to do with it, Joseph. Your enthusiasm, your zeal, your love for the Lord came through. But apart from that, you're a bit of a boffin. He's quite a clever chap. So what is a clever chap doing, believing in creation?
Well,
explain yourself.
I will do my best. One of the most interesting points we often come across is we were being interviewed by it was a Christian radio station in the UK, and one of they weren't, shall we say, particularly friendly towards our kind of beliefs about creation and the like. But one of the interesting points they said was, so you believe that the earth is 6,000 years old because of the evidence that you had found? And the answer is no. We believe the earth is 6,000 years old because that's what we get from reading the Bible. We believe that God created in 6 days because that's what we get from reading the Bible. We believe that God, Jesus Christ, is the sovereign creator from reading the Bible. So even though, yes, I may have done fairly well in academia, yes, I may be able to reel off goodness knows how many dinosaur names or dig up things and present stuff and do experiments and write papers and all that kind of stuff, but ultimately the foundation for me is, and always will be, and should be for everybody else, regardless of what they are able to do academically, should be the Bible. Because that's where it starts off with. So that's the first thing to sort of get straight, if you like. I believe in creation. I believe in a 6 literal days of creation around 6,000 to 7,000 years ago, being created by Jesus Christ, because that's what I read in the Bible. Okay, Christianity, as you know, is a very, very personal relationship with Jesus. It is not a abstract set of beliefs. It's not a set of rules that you have to follow. It's not a an abstract relationship with a God. It's very personal. It's a very real experience. So once you've experienced that, there is no going back. And I wouldn't want to believe any other way, because as soon as you start questioning what he says in the beginning, then you've got to automatically start questioning what's in the end. So for me, that is paramount. Now, it just so happens that all the evidence that I work with backs up that belief system, right? But then you should expect it to. If it's actually true, then the evidence is what is what you expect it should do. Which is what's really interesting in 1 Timothy 6:20. It says Paul's basically giving a warning to Timothy, which is beware of false science. And the King James Version does use that word science because it's the old Latin word for knowledge. So beware of false science, beware of false knowledge, beware of false information. It will lead you astray. That's the premise, that's the warning that Paul is giving young Timothy. And the really interesting flip side of that is that false science will lead you away from Christ, but true science will lead you towards Christ. Now, the science doesn't save you. Only faith in Jesus Christ through his grace will save you. Right? We're saved by grace through faith. But all of the evidence is kind of going, there it is, Jesus Christ. He's the one, he's the way. So I believe in the creation account that's written in the Bible because I read it in the Bible and because I know it to be true because of my relationship with Jesus Christ. But all of the good science, the true science that I do, that other people do, all points towards that being true. It is leading people towards Christ. That's the premise of our ministry. It's leading people to Christ through, and one of the ways is by using the evidence that we see around us. It's
amazing. You've got some bits and pieces here. Now,
indeed.
Last week, John showed us some of the little booklets that you guys are producing, one of which you had an app that went with it that kind
Yes.
of made it into 3D, and it was just, I love it. I love it.
It's exciting.
So, what have we got here? The rocks cry out.
The rocks cry out. Jesus said that if
With
man
Indiana Joe.
That's me. Yes, that's me. That's the
There we
stage.
go.
That's the stage name, if you like. That was given to me while I was in Australia. I quite liked it, so I kept it.
Die, flesh,
yeah,
die.
I know.
Great.
So Jesus said that the rocks would cry out his praises if man ceased to praise him. So that's where the kind of the idea of it comes from, because I'm a firm believer that the majority of the geology rocks around the world were formed in Noah's flood. I believe there's fantastic evidence for that. Now, Noah's flood itself is a direct result of God's judgment and God as sustainer, as well as God as creator in the first place. So the rocks really do cry out his praises, both as creator, sustainer and judge, okay, and coming king. So that's what the premise of the rocks is. Now, the idea is it stems back to my story from earlier, right? My parents having no resources. This was led directly out of that. So it's kind of been geared towards families, but it is suitable for absolutely anybody. Now, the premise of it is this. We go to a beach, we film a 10 to 15 minute on-site documentary, adventure style, showing you the geology from a biblical perspective. That is free to watch online at www.therockscryout.co.uk.
Okay.
Free to watch on there. You then have the book. We have, we've got 2 which we've produced so far. The Valley of Lyme, which is Harper Hill in Derbyshire in England. We have Aberystwyth Bay, which is in Wales. We've got another one which we've nearly finished. We filmed it. We've nearly finished producing it for Hunstanton. More titles will come out. We're filming another 3 in the next 3 weeks. We will be up in Scotland sometime, Lord willing. But the idea is it doesn't just have your practical information, because you can see in here you've got your maps, you've got how to get there, are there toilets on site, where can you get food, where do you park. So it's got all the practical information, but then the big picture takes you step by step through the geology. So you need to go here, this is what you'll see, here's the pictures, this is how you dig it, this is how you do it. There's an in-depth section in the back, goes into a little bit more information about the in-depth geology, all fully referenced, and if there are lots of fossils to be found, there's a fossil ID guide in the back there as well. So it is all there so that you have got a resource to actually visit this site and actually do the research yourself, find the information, see the evidence hands-on for yourself. Because I love leading field trips, but I can't be everywhere at once. And neither can John, right? Especially in the UK, because he lives on the other side of the world. So it's a resource for people to be able to get that, hands-on evidence. But the great thing about it is not just the fact that you can go out in there and visit it using these books, but because of the video, which goes along with the books, you can actually watch the video and read the books. You don't even need to visit the place, because it's so thorough. It takes you step by step, so you get a really good idea of local UK geology, because the Grand Canyon is spectacular evidence, but most people are never going to visit it in their lives. You've got a far more chance of actually being able to get out there and visit one of these locations nearby to you, and take your children there as well and show them the evidence hands-on.
Great. Joseph, you take a breath, okay? I was just going to say, just to remind you that probably about 50%, 60% of our viewers are in the US. We have them in Australia, South Africa, Singapore, even China, even Dubai, the UK, of course, all around the world. Now, you are never going to have enough time to do these little books for all the different sites. No. So I love the idea that there's a DVD that goes along with them, so that people can you can actually watch. We actually did a fossil hunt with John. I can't remember if it was last springtime.
I think it was last time he was here. So I think it was I think it was just after the mega conference with Answers in Genesis.
Maybe yes, probably.
It might have been, yeah.
But
it was a year or two.
But
back.
Yes, it was. It was a freezing cold day. I do remember that, and he's just super. It's on our geology channel, so that's absolutely wonderful. Now, underneath these 2 little books, what have we got here?
So, we're talking about more of a worldwide audience. What we have here is Tides, Mites, and Fossil Fights. It's a young world after all.
Right.
Now, what this is a research book.
I'm going to stop you right now. Now, in the UK and possibly other nations, tights, spelled TIGHTS, is ladies' hosiery.
Yes,
all right?
Yes,
but men can wear tights as well to keep
this
cozy.
reference to tights is different. Yeah, this is reference to stalactites. Mites is a reference to stalagmites. And fossil fights is a reference to fossils and the controversy that's been caused over them. Now, this is basically a research book. It's full of marvellous examples. You can see it's very, very bright and colourful. Loads of pictorial examples all throughout it. And it's got stuff from the UK. It's got stuff from Australia. It's got stuff from the US. It's got stuff from New Zealand in there. All over the globe, all different on-field experiments, examples, real, not just ideas or just theories or opinions, actual real experiments, which you can even replicate some of them, and some of the fantastic real fossils that we have on display in our museums around the world. Wow. So it's a worldwide basis, worldwide coverage, real up-to-date information showing you that actually it's all about process, not time. Time is your biggest enemy when it comes to geology and fossils and things like that. And that's a lie which is being promoted by media, schools and television and the like today, and universities. But when you actually get out there and actually do some experiments and do some research, what you find is that there's nothing out there that contradicts the word of God. In fact, it all goes, there is Jesus. It points towards Jesus Christ as the creator and sustainer. So that's a really wonderful worldwide emphasis on the research that we've been doing as well. Wonderful little report as well.
Fantastic. I remember meeting it was an amateur archaeologist many years ago who seriously believed he'd found the site of Noah's Ark. But one of the exhibits that he showed me was a petrified tree trunk. So if you've never seen it, it looks and feels like metal. It's very heavy. Yeah. And this, if I remember rightly, was another one of the proofs, though, for a young Earth as well, because I went to Venice many years ago, and I was told that some of the stanchions that had actually been put into the sea or into the water had petrified very quickly at the bottom. So, whereas other scientists were saying that takes tens of thousands of years, if not longer.
Yeah, we're doing a lot of experiments very similar to that. So our stalactite machines, which we make, which are growing stalactites that are supposed to take many millions of years or hundreds of thousands or millions of years to form, are forming within months. And then you put a little soft teddy bear or cuddly toy underneath it, and it permineralizes it. It basically turns it into a fossil within months. We're doing experiments with coal, which is producing coal within 24 hours. We're doing experiments with opals, which are making opals and oils and stuff within weeks. And it's all down to getting the right chemical process in place. Forget about the time. It's got nothing to do with time whatsoever.
Yeah. Now, something else, Joseph, I was speaking about with John last programme. I believe the doors, if your ministry is the same as any other Bible-believing ministry, the doors are closing.
Oh, yes.
Now, we know that when, and people will be sick of me repeating this, we know that when the Lord Jesus Christ was asked by his disciples, what will be the signs of the end of the age and your return? And he says, take care you're not deceived. So the deception is a major sign. And we see, because of this, there is an apostasy and a falling away from biblical truth. Now, even people in the world can see that. Yes. So Christianity has very negative connotations. But for somebody like yourself who's working in the realm of science, albeit you're an evangelist first and foremost, are you finding that the doors are closing?
Very much so, yeah. I hear stories from John when he was visiting here 20 years ago, and he'd have multiple schools on his visits. Yes. I've been in this ministry for getting on for 6 years now. I've visited one school, Christian school. There are about 2 in the country that I know of who would be happy to have us, but they have to jump through many loopholes to allow us in, even though they're a private Christian school, and I wouldn't be allowed in the science classroom either. So that's one place where it's being shut. Churches are increasingly shutting their doors as well. I come from Norfolk, which is where I currently reside. It's regarded as the most atheistic county, and out of the population of Christians, or those who certainly would pertain to be Christians, there is a very academic sort of prestige going on around in the area. So the vast majority of them would believe in some form of theistic evolution, as God using evolution in some way. So they wouldn't be very happy with what I believe either. So there's another place where it's shutting. And I think the whole political climate of the UK at the moment, not getting into politics, but the godlessness that is coming out of it is making it increasingly difficult. It's interesting, last year John took me to Australia for sort of training and getting more experience with worldwide ministry and stuff, and I went to his church and one of his Bible studies, just sort of as a visitor, and if it wasn't so serious it would almost be funny. I was sitting there and they were sort of chatting about, oh look, all these different issues that are happening in Australia at the moment. We're about to have this referendum on legalising gay marriage. We're about to have this, we can't really call the national church evangelical anymore. It's going downhill and all this stuff. And I was just sort of sitting there thinking, this happened 5 years ago for the UK. This all happened 5 to 10 years ago. I've lived through it. I've seen it.
You've actually lived through it.
And it's now getting to the point where Australia is going through that as well.
Yeah.
So we're kind of 5 to 10 years behind or further down the line, depending on which way you want to look at it in terms of godlessness. So it's very sad to see the way that it's going. And obviously since then, so much has happened for Australia. But it's sometimes very eye-opening to step out of your own home country and view some other countries and view their perspective on here. And by turning around and looking back on your own country, you realise how far down it is going. And so, yes, there is a lot of challenges and a lot of stuff. But God has sustained us so far, and I believe he will continue to do so.
If people could support you, how would they find you, Joseph? Sorry, am I calling you the right name? Joseph.
Joe, it's fine. Joseph, that's absolutely fine. So there are two ways that you can support the ministry. You can support the ministry generally through the UK Trust. I believe John may have mentioned that.
Well, he says that you'll tell us about that. Okay,
so basically you can support the ministry in general through the UK Trust. So it's you can find all the details at creationresearch.net.
Okay.
And that sort of supports the whole ministry in general. It's sort of slightly separately run. If you want to support me personally in full-time ministry, as in on a personal basis, so that I can continue to do this work, then the best way of doing that is by emailing info@creationresearchuk.com and just stating your intentions. I'd like to be able to support Joseph and the ministry which he's doing, and somebody will be able to get back to you about details how you can support me personally.
So that's
info@creationresearchuk.com.
Okay, Stuart will put that up shortly. We've run out of time, Joseph. The Lord bless you and the work you're doing, and we're looking forward on the Geology channel, and I can't remember what number that is. I'm sure we'll put that up on the screen. We're going to have some new work from you and John being shown. So God bless. Thank you for watching, folks. We'll be back next week. Bye-bye just now.
See you later.
Bye.
This is GV247.tv, bringing biblical perspective to the world in which you live. A powerful free resource with hundreds of short films on a wide range of Bible topics from experts around the world, plus full-length sermons and programs for teaching and encouragement. Choose from current affairs, signs of the times, a chance to voice your own opinion, and special offers on our full-length feature films, documentaries, and study materials. At over 4 hours in length, the Lamplight Project is a systematic 12-part Bible study series, a powerful teaching tool that begins with the origins of life and takes the viewer on a comprehensive journey packed with high-profile interviews, film, graphics, and illustrations, concluding with the return of Christ and an encouragement to stand firm and be faithful. Complete with a free study guide download for both personal and group study, this powerful interactive guide connects to over 1,000 programs with expert interviews on GV247.tv, our free service web TV channel. Does My Life Have Meaning? A powerful 1-hour presentation produced from the Lamplight Project. With a free copy of the Gospel of Luke, this film is crammed with engaging interviews, film and graphics. A life-challenging film to those searching for answers. As distributors for the Jesus film, we offer this timeless movie based on Luke's Gospel. This clear presentation of the life of Jesus Christ has been viewed worldwide and translated into over 1,200 languages. We provide the film with a free copy of the Gospel of Luke. The Daniel Project is a popular TV documentary that presents an overview of Bible prophecy and an encouragement to read the signs of the times. Hailed as one of the best TV films to be made on the subject, DVD extras feature a heart-to-heart interview about the way of rescue. Based loosely on the documentary, The Daniel Connection is a full-length feature film. This fictional thriller incorporates many of the themes promoted through pop culture and social media which affect people on a global scale. Launched at the Cannes Film Festival, the Daniel Connection points the ever-skeptical viewer to search the Bible for answers to life's deepest questions. We've been serving the body of Christ for over 30 years, and if you would like further information, please do not hesitate to get in touch.